It's my feel-good breakfast show.
It's been 2 months of the national lockdown, and navigating the regulations that have changed multiple aspects of our daily lives has been tricky and trying at the same time, to say the least. As we find ourselves now entering level 3 of lockdown, we're being joined by our tried and trusted friend when it comes to legal matters, Director at Legalese CEO today, Eitan Stern, about some aspects that we might need clarified. Eitan, so good to chat to you again. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be back.
Eitan, when we last chatted, we just entered level 5 of lockdown. A lot has changed. How have you been keeping yourself, going professionally as well as personally?
These are trying times, as you say. Lawyers are luckily always in need, so we've had some work, but we support small businesses and growing businesses. So where our clients struggle, we struggle. So it's been tough, but I'm very lucky. We've got work, I've got a roof over my head, I've got food on the table. So, I'm counting my blessings in a big way.
Eitan, the current lockdown has delayed many aspects of life, and one frustrating delay is where people have secured leases in places other than where they reside. Travel is restricted at the same time as well. How can landlords and their tenants navigate contracts that have been affected by the lockdown during this time?
Okay, so this is an interesting one and relevant to many of us, especially those with offices or shops which we're renting. So the question of, what do we do in such a situation that we can't get to the places that we're renting? And unfortunately, there is actually no clear answer here, and it's a space which many of us are navigating. But that being said, I do have some legal guidance on what you can do if you're in this area. Firstly, check your lease agreement. And that's the contract that's going to govern the rental that you have with your land person. And it may include some guidelines on what to do in such a situation. For instance, it might include some terms on what to do if you want to cancel your lease. So that's always your first place to start, your lease agreement. Secondly, you look at the applicable law. We've heard a lot about force majeure, which is an act of God, essentially this virus is considered an act of God. And in some situations, tenants may be able to cancel their lease or escape their lease duties under an act of God, but it's not so simple and clear, and your landlord may see it differently. So if you're going to go that route, it's important to get legal advice. But mostly, this is going to come down to a compromise and working together. So the tenant and the landlord are going to have to figure out what to do to get out of this situation, because the landlord can't give you access to the space just as much as you can't use the space. So the parties are going to have to come to the table and find a settlement that keeps both parties in business, because nobody is going to win from one company going out of business.
Now, Eitan, we know that non-essential travel is, of course, restricted during this time, but with the anticipated multi-level lockdown that we're heading into, how can people manage travel between various regions for work or for family reasons? So we're going into level 3 now. How are we going to be able to navigate traveling for family, for work, and for all those other related purposes?
What I can tell you is that we all need to keep on top of this. We'll need to know the laws to ensure that we don't get into trouble. And it's our job to keep tabs on our government to ensure they're doing their job properly. And that's our role in the democracy. And we're very privileged to do it. So if you want an answer on what the travel restrictions are going to be, check the regulations when they come out, not just the media or the social media reports, but the actual regulations. They're quite easy to interpret and to read. And if you're making business decisions based on travel on these regulations, then it's best talk to a lawyer to make sure that you're not making any errors.
Eitan, I know that, COVID-19 has been very stressful for individuals, but businesses as well, they've been under enormous pressure and stress. I mean, a lot of them have been forced to close or retrench their employees. What obligations do employers have during this time to pay out these employees in terms of retrenchment packages for those who have been retrenched?
So what's important for everyone out there to know is that even in Corona or in a crisis situation, labor rights and laws still exist. And companies can't just fire employees and not pay them. They have to follow due process. So retrenchment is a termination for operational reasons. So if a company's operations change or if they can't afford their staff anymore, they can retrench. And what's important to know is there's a process that they have to follow. They have to bring their employees into the discussion of what's going on. They have to brainstorm ideas on how to avoid the retrenchment or how to mitigate harm. So maybe putting the affected employees onto part-time employment, and they have to put all of it in writing and allow the employees an opportunity to make comments. Then after that consideration, they can make a call. And then if they are able to retrench, then a severance pay may be required. And in simple terms, this could be, well, any money that the employee has already earned up until that point. So if they're retrenched halfway through a month, you have to pay them for that half of the month. Any outstanding leave pay which they're entitled to, so leave days which they haven't taken, they're entitled to that leave days. And then 1 week's full pay for every full year which they've worked. So if you've worked for 1 year, you get 1 week's pay as a severance. And if you've worked for 10 years, you'll get 10 weeks pay as a severance.
And of course, these are the details that people need to be engaging in with their employers in this respect. But let's talk about instances where employers are cutting salaries. You know, it's happening across the country. We're hearing stories of situations where an employer has to cut salaries in order to be able to pay everyone. What are the legalities around this? Is this legal? Is it allowed? What is the sort of consultation that is to be expected in that instance?
You can't just cut a salary without any sort of consultation with your staff. So the employers would still need to go through that procedure of consulting their staffs and coming to an agreement on what to do. So while employers are able to do it for operational reasons, it doesn't mean they can just bypass the laws. And they can't just say, cool, you're on half salary. They have to go through the procedure in order to do it.
And just the responsibility of the employee during this time in terms of being able to get to work and going to work. Can an employee use COVID-19 and the lockdown as a reason for refusing to go to work? So could I sit at home and say, sorry, there's a big pandemic going on right now, I will not be coming to work?
You know, we have labor laws and the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and an employer has to offer a safe environment for someone to work in, and that's the law. But essentially, that might not be possible for some employers to do at this point. And we're going to see issues where matters like this are going to be coming to court, where an employee might be saying on quite a good faith basis that they can't come to work because of safety. And it's quite unclear at this point how the law is going to deal with it. But I have a feeling that we're going to be figuring this out in the coming months. My suggestion is, and essentially it's going to be at this point, it's one around good faith. You know, if you're using this as an excuse to just not go to work or to take advantage, you're probably going to come out in the wrong.
It's certainly a challenge to our lifestyles, to our daily lives and how we lead our lives, but certainly to how we navigate the legal space as well. But hey, Eitan Stern, thank you so much. Always making the time, but also just shedding that light where it's most needed.